Saturday Night, the latest film from director Jason Reitman, begins with quite possibly the most famous quote ever made by Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels. "The show doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30. It's this mantra that has led SNL through 50 years of episodes, and considering an entire show is put together in less than a week, it's remarkable any episode ever made it to air. Sometimes, the show is a showcase for some of the best and brightest in the comedy world, filled with jokes and political commentary that become iconic and influential. Other times, it's just what could be scrambled together in a week. To those Saturday Night Live isn't relevant/funny anymore commenters, sorry, the show has always been this level of a mixed bag. Yes, even when you grew up with it." In Saturday Night, Reitman, who also company wrote with his Ghostbusters collaborator, Gil Kenan, does his best to not make this an ensemble of young actors doing impressions of comedy greats, nor is he trying to create an entirely historically accurate recreation of what actually happened in the 90 minutes leading up to the first SNL episode. Instead, Reitman is more interested in capturing the spirit of getting ready for a show as frantic as SNL, a ticking time bomb that will go off at 11:30 p.m., which can seem more like herding cats than putting on a comedy show, and how it's a minor miracle that this show has been able to do this for nearly half a century. Gabriel LaBelle, The Fabelmans, stars as the young Lorne Michaels, who is trying to prove himself to NBC that his idea of a live comedy show with musical guests, movies, Muppets, and everything but the kitchen sink is a good idea. His producer, Dick Ebersol, Cooper Hoffman, is trying to make things as smooth as possible, while also trying to do what's best for the studio. But with 90 minutes to air, it seems as though there's no chance that Saturday Night will hit the air to prove itself. Network executives are breathing down Michael's throat. John Belushi, Matt Wood, still hasn't signed his contract, there's no one to do the lighting, bricks are still being laid, and Michaels hasn't even decided how to pare down the show to an hour and a half. With so much still up in the air and nothing seemingly going right, it looks as though Michael's brainchild might not manage to make it to air, regardless of whether it's 11:30 or not. Right out the gate, as the opening credits roll, Saturday Night introduces the audience to who is playing who in this recreation. Instead of stopping the film dead in its tracks whenever we need to be introduced to an actor playing a comedian we know, this intro handles that simply and effectively. The casting of the show's original crew is impeccable, but is also never attempting to be a direct take of the show's first cast. For example, Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd seems like such an odd choice, but O'Brien matches the mannerisms as much as he needs to, without going into an impression. Wood, Lamorne Morris, Garrett Morris, and Corey Michael Smith, Chevy Chase, are all matching the spirit of these actors, but never diving too deep into trying to recreate them directly. Saturday Night also makes the show's 3 female cast members, Gilda Radner, Ella Hunt, Jane Curtin, Kim Matula, and Lorraine Newman, Emily Farren, feel like a unified trio, trying to make their name in a show that's very clearly a boys' club. Balancing out Michael's manic energy is Rosie Schuster, Rachel Sennott, Michael's wife from whom he's separated, which shows that despite Michael's getting the credit, Schuster was an important teen to his young, without which the show probably would have never made it to air. Saturday Night is crammed with an absurd ensemble, from Tommy Dewey's Michael Odenog, whose dark, brash sense of humor is both a gift and a curse, Matthew Rhys as the show's first host, George Carlin, Nicholas Braun pulling double duty as Jim Henson and Andy Kaufman, J.K. Simmons as friggin' Milton Berle, and no hard feelings Andrew Barth Feldman as the only person who might be in over their head more than Michaels. Each character here only gets a few minutes of screen time, but each is following their own specific storyline along the fringes of Michael's story. While it would be great to potentially spend more time with each of these great characters, Saturday Night, much like SNL, is about the ensemble rather than the individual, and Reitman plays to that, making the amount of characters who Michaels needs to deal with feel overwhelming and impossible to manage.
Plenty of tickets left, guys. Free show. Fuck's sake.
Are you English?
No, I'm not English. Why?
No, because you you are pretty.
As the center of this recreation is LaBelle, who already proved he could be a young Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans, and now equally excels as a young Lorne Michaels. For 90 minutes, we watch LaBelle go from a cautiously optimistic fan of the next big things in comedy, to an exhausted shell of a man just trying to make it to Showtime. By the end of the film, he's covered in flop sweat and fake blood, and we feel his exhaustion simply by looking at his bloodshot eyes and defeated attitude. LaBelle is merely the ringleader, but the young actor does an excellent job of presenting this iconic comedy figure, flaws and all. Even though Reitman and Keenan attempt to base each of these characters' stories in fact and what they were doing on the night of this first episode, it also, rightfully, never feels like it's attempting to be a direct recreation of everything that happened leading up to this premiere. This is a clear exaggeration of what was likely one of the most intense shows of Michael's career, and it's easy to see how all of these events probably happened in the build-up to this show, just probably not in the 90 minutes beforehand. There are moments that are clearly added to make more of a strong narrative structure, like Michael's having to explain what the hell is show is to network executive David Taves, Willem Dafoe, right before air, or having Michaels undergo an epiphany as he watches Belushi ice skate in a bee costume outside Rockefeller Center. These moments don't quite work because they do feel false in the larger scheme of this bonkers production, a necessary evil in order to give this story a tighter structure than it would have without. Saturday Night is also the best film from Reitman since his work with Diablo Cody in 2018's Tully and 2011's Young Adult. Reitman knows how to build the tension of this situation, a never-ending string of problems that need to be solved and quickly. Also perfectly adding to this sense is Jon Batiste's score, which is centered around a steady drum beat that builds and smashes to pull at your nerves in effective ways, a la Birdman. Reitman has spoken at length about his love of Saturday Night Live, and even working as a writer on the show for a week, and you can feel that love emanating from his camera, as he maneuvers around this recreation of Studio 8H, almost as though he's a documentarian there to capture this groundbreaking episode of television. He's swinging the camera around, making long takes, rapidly cutting between moments, and generally having a blast behind the camera in a way that we haven't seen from him since probably Juno. However, Reitman and Keenan's script mostly asks its audience to have as much awareness about Saturday Night Live and its cast as they do, and that could likely be a bit overwhelming for the uninitiated. Saturday Night asks its audience to know details like how the cast used to advertise Polaroid camera during the show, Belushi's history with dressing up as a bee on the show, and the appearance of Alan Zweibel, Josh Breener, will feel like an oh shit moment to fans, and mean absolutely nothing to others. Reitman and Keenan are clearly super fans of SNL and its history, and because of that, the script often doesn't take into account that its audience probably won't know as much about this show as they do. But beyond that, Saturday Night is an exciting, enthralling, and often hilarious celebration of Saturday Night Live with a tremendous cast that shows the unbelievable amount of work that goes into putting this show on. There is a clear love for the legacy and history of SNL and its importance in comedy and television, and Reitman captures that wonderfully here. By looking back at this iconic episode, Reitman has made one of his best films in years. Pros. Jason Reitman presents the frenetic energy and stressful build-up to this groundbreaking live comedy show. This ensemble is one of the year's best, yet never falls into cheap impersonations. Cons. Reitman and Gil Keenan's script expects the audience to have some awareness of SNL and its history beforehand.
Why don't we punt? We should run the dress rehearsal and claw back a win next Saturday.
We can't, Dick. It's a live show.